Okay, so we can get started. And as usual, thank you everybody again for joining us this evening. And I'm Ming. This event is hosted by Upswing Academy. Upswing Academy is based in Oakville, Ontario. Upswing Academy provides educational programs for students from grade 3 to grade 12. We offer different programs, including English language learning, English language arts, reading, writing, and also STEM courses. Actually, we also provide university bridging programs for high school students. So if you are high school students, if you want to get a taste of what university program will be like, contact us, and you actually can find our WeChat QR code here. You can just scan and connect to us. Okay, so that's about Upswing Academy. Now let me introduce our guest speaker today. That's Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Amy's actually from our neighborhood city, from Mississauga. She's actually a graduate from the regional arts program for visual arts. I think that's one of, is it the only one actually in the region, or maybe in Mississauga?
Mississauga. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's the only one in
that's the
Mississauga.
only one, right? So actually, she also received awards for science and earth and space science. So as we can see, it's not just only about arts, it's actually a program with science elements as well, okay? So in addition to his admission to University of Waterloo, she was also accepted to other programs in Waterloo and Ryerson. And eventually she chose the urban planning, the urban design, okay? So currently she's in her 4th year, and she has been winning the Dean's Honors for the 2 terms, and she has been taking part in many co-op programs. So today, she's going to share with us her university experience as well as her co-op experiences. Okay, now Amy, the room is yours.
Thank you. So I'll just share my screen now. Okay.
Yes,
Can
good.
everyone see?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, hi everyone. I'm Amy. I'm, as Ming introduced, I'm a 4th year planning student at the University of Waterloo. And so just a little bit more about myself. I was born in Beijing, China, and my family immigrated to Canada around the year 2000. And so I was raised in Mississauga, Ontario. Went to a visual arts program in high school, and it actually helped me explore a lot of my interests. I went in kind of thinking I would go into architecture because I was always around visual arts growing up. And actually, through talking to various people who were also interested in architecture, I learned about planning because there are some similarities. And through trying out different co-ops, just high school co-ops, and talking to different people, I decided to go into planning. And here I am now, almost completing my undergrad in the planning program at the University of Waterloo. And just some of my other interests and hobbies include photography, cooking, camping, and astronomy. Oh, and so a little bit about the University of Waterloo campus. So the main campus is fairly centralized, and it's easy to walk around because a lot of the buildings are all pretty close to each other. I know in some campuses that are maybe more downtown, like Toronto, they're spread out and you don't really get the sense of student life. But Waterloo, it's all together, and most of your buildings are very close to each other. So that makes it easy to walk to class, go to different activities like events, go study in library, or just go to the gym. And the outdoor amenities, like in the photo at the top right, there's like some lawn chairs to relax, hang out, and there's even some like other tables that are, normal height, so you can study on your laptop. And the campus itself is located near another campus, Laurier University. So this creates a really nice university town where students have a really strong sense of community even outside of the campus. Like there's a lot of restaurants and cafes nearby. And so just immediately outside of the campus, you kind of still feel like you're in that university area. And the school itself has a variety of different clubs, student associations, and teams. And one that I recommend is our Planning Students Association. So, especially if you really want to get to know upper years, it's a great association to apply to. There's different roles that range from like social media management, project managing, or like photography, which is what I joined. And so I also joined other clubs like the photography club, and recently joined, or before COVID, recently joined the Muay Thai club. And these other clubs are just a few interesting clubs like Dragon Boat, Imprint, which is our newspaper, and we have a solar car team at our school as well. And more about the program itself. So it's one of the only accredited, or one of the few accredited undergrad planning programs in Canada. So there's a few accredited master's programs, but at the undergrad level, I believe there's only two others. I know Ryerson has one that I did apply to, and Calgary, which is fairly new. Um, so the program itself is very interdisciplinary, and so in the program, we address a lot of major challenges that our communities are facing today through a diverse range, such as environmental planning, community sustainability, urban design, transportation planning, housing, urban economics, and heritage planning. And so our class sizes are fairly small. The program usually admits around low 100s to mid 100 students a year. Um, and that means your class sizes are going to be around that size because the class is so specialized, or the course is so specialized, that you're not really going to have overlapping programs. I know like if it's like a math course, there's a lot of intro to math courses that a bunch of programs will have to take, but our program is very specialized, so only people within the planning program will take them. So your class sizes are pretty predictable, but there are a few class sizes that do vary just because like statistics and environmental studies, that overlaps with a few programs. And also every year, class sizes decrease a little bit just because there is a dropout rate, just like any undergraduate program. So 120, 150 usually dwindles down to a little bit, but that's to be expected in a lot of programs. And about the courses, we have a bunch of core courses, especially in first year. You'll get a bunch more elective courses as the years go on, but in the first term, you only have core courses. And a lot of these are really nice introduction to the field itself, because I know when I started, I didn't know much about the program. So you get to understand like the evolution of planning through Plan 100, which explains how planning has changed over the years. There's professional communication, which helps with a lot of communication skills that you'll definitely need in your professional and academic career. Perspectives on planning, introduction to planning analysis, and an intro to environmental studies. And in the winter term, you'll have a planning, administration, and finance course. And this is a very useful course because this goes over all the different planning frameworks within the different levels of government, municipal, provincial, federal. And you also know the different planning policies and documents within each. So you kind of know what different levels of government do in respect to planning. And then when Plan 110 is an urban design course. And ENVS 178, it's our first stats course. And then you'll have two electives to choose from. And within planning, there's a few career paths you can go to. As you can see, there's a variety of different planning fields. So you can also go into a bunch of different career paths. There's just general urban planning, there's environmental planning, transportation planning, residential development, emergency planning, urban design, planning law, and social planning. And a lot of these are kind of interconnected. And something that I didn't really know about, but am now very interested in, is transportation planning. And coming into first year, did not know that existed really. But upon learning about it, it became very interesting to me because it connected a bunch of different topics that I was interested in. Like these are the reasons I kind of chose planning over my previous, like I wanted to go into architecture for my middle school and beginning of high school. But then after learning a bit more about what planning was, I decided architecture was really right for me. So I kind of went into planning because I was interested in environmental planning, urban design, and social planning. And transportation planning ties into a bit of all three. As you'll see, they're very interconnected because in transportation planning, the things that you plan will impact the environment. You know, if you're designing highways, there's a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, as opposed to if you're designing something that's more focusing on transit networks. Same with urban design. If your area has a heavy transit, has like more transit nodes, then the urban design and urban fabric will be very different. And social planning, a lot of transit networks are very connected to a lot of housing issues and connectivity to resources such as healthcare, schools, and even healthy food access. So they're all very interconnected, and this is why transportation has been so interesting to me. And a little bit more about the co-op program. So this is primarily why I chose UW over Ryerson. Although there weren't many planning programs in my undergrad, I was able to choose between Ryerson or Waterloo. The other UW course I applied to was an environmental studies course because although I've always been interested in environmental studies, um, the career path wasn't as applicable as I'd like. But within planning, you can also focus on the more environmental side. So I chose UW's planning program over Ryerson because co-op, and that's because it provided me with an opportunity to apply a lot of theories and concepts that I'd learned in my study terms. And it's kind of nice because so you can see that the co-op and study terms kind of go back and forth. So some terms you're on co-op, some terms you're on study term. And that way you have a nice exchange of skills and knowledge between both because things you learn in school you can apply during co-op and vice versa because you actually do learn a lot of things in your co-op and you can apply that to a lot of your academic writings or projects. And aside from that, you get 5 co-op programs, which means you're kind of free to choose what co-ops to explore. So you might choose one field and be like, oh, this is great for me. I want to pursue this. Or this isn't great for me. I want to try something else. So you have that opportunity to try different things. Of course, this is kind of restricted based upon like what jobs are out there because certain fields just have more jobs than others. Like urban design, there aren't a lot of job opportunities available, especially at a co-op level. But then other jobs, especially transportation, there's a lot of jobs out there. It's kind of growing. So you'll kind of depends what's available, of course, but you do have that flexibility if you want. And then that experience, of course, gives you a competitive edge after you graduate because a lot of full-time jobs do ask for work experience. And as you might know, experience jobs that ask for experience is a little bit difficult to gain when you don't have that opportunity to gain them. So co-op is a great opportunity for you to dive into the work field. And of course, there's a lot of schools out there that don't have co-op. So co-op for sure makes you a pretty competitive, um, employable student after. And as I mentioned, there's not many accredited undergraduate programs in Canada. And University of Waterloo was the only one with a mandatory co-op program. Uh, and with that in mind, the co-op programs are great, but you have to keep that, you must complete at least 4 out of 5 in order to graduate. And so this adds an additional requirement to your graduation requirements. So you not only have to keep a certain grade, which is 75% of your core courses, but you also have to complete at least 4 out of 5. If you miss one, the school kind of lets you off. If you miss two, it's kind of like failing courses. Um, so yeah, it's just another requirement, but a great opportunity. And so a little bit about my co-op experience. I started off as a student, and then after 2 years of schooling, you begin your first co-op. And I worked as a assistant transportation planner at City of Hamilton, where I got some good experience in the public sector. And then the rest of my co-ops have been in the private sector. The first one was at a Toronto consulting group, a BA group, and they focus on transportation engineering. And so I was transportation planner slash analyst in my first co-op there. And second, I was a transportation designer. And then at my fourth co-op at AREP, which is a larger company, they're an international company. They are primarily an architectural engineering firm. And within Toronto, they focus mainly on engineering projects. So in Toronto, I worked on local things, like a lot of transportation networks in Toronto and redevelopment projects within Toronto. But Europe is well known around the world. Like they have some very well known architectural structures like the Sydney Opera House and even like the Beijing 2008 Olympics Bird's Nest. Um, and my last co-op, which was affected by COVID, so I wasn't able to find a job that was within something I was interested in or what I thought I was interested in, which was transportation. But I was actually able to explore something new, which, and now that looking back, I'm really glad I was able to learn something new other than transportation, and that was accessible housing researcher. And this job actually was very eye-opening because I had previously not known about the, I guess, limits in accessible housing within Canada. So it was a very interesting co-op. So it goes to show that sometimes if you don't get the job that you want, it can end up being still pretty good. And so some advice for you guys, not necessarily just to get into this program, but it's just advice in general to explore opportunities in a field study that interests you. So kind of figure out what's right for you, because in high school, going in middle school and going into high school, I wanted to be in architecture because that's what I was kind of more aware of. But then I found out about urban planning from a friend, and after researching it, I became very interested in it. And so my school had a co-op program that I got into, and I was able to um, go to an architecture firm for my co-op. And this allowed me to really understand um, what was within architecture. So I was on the fence about the programs. And after the co-op, I decided architecture wasn't right for me. So that was a great way for me to feel out what was right for me. But of course, some co-op programs in high school are hard to get into just because it's not as accessible at a high school level. So there's other ways like joining clubs and events that interact that so you can interact with people of that field. But I know like a program in planning, like planning events aren't really common. So for that case, I would recommend other events that are not directed towards students. I know there's a lot of public meetings out there. They're usually organized by planners with this good city or of a consulting company, and they're usually to see what the public has to say about a project that they're thinking of proposing. So, if you attend the event, whether it's in person or online now, after hearing the main event and the main Q&A, you can always ask what the planners or professionals there think about the field so you really understand what people are feeling like in the field. And of course, the next thing, I think you guys all know this, but to ensure your courses and averages align with the admission requirements. And I know the next one is a little bit difficult right now, but hopefully once you guys get closer, you're able to attend open houses at universities. And I know right now they have some online open houses that are probably just more informative and where you can ask students about what they think. But if you have the opportunity, you can explore campuses once open houses are in person. And one thing that I wish I knew was to understand the skills of the program. So my program planning is heavily reliant on writing and communication skills, which I did not really expect. I thought there were some more technical skills involved. And in high school, I took mostly math, science, and art courses, like no writing courses except for English, which was mandatory. And coming into it, I was just a shock. Like I'd never written so much in my life before. And if I knew that ahead of time in high school, I probably would have taken like more social science courses so I could prepare for it. Because all my math and science skills were not really utilized at all. And I was just like, oh, I have to write so much now. And it's just very new. So this is not really, you don't have to follow this because if you might know that if you're going to a program that is very math heavy, then you're good. But in the case that you don't know, I think it's important for you to like look into it so that you're not as surprised when you go into it. And yeah, that's everything. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, thank you, Amy. So now it's the time for our Q&A. So if you have any questions, you are encouraged to type your questions in the chat box. Okay. Let me just leave a message there. Okay, so while I believe our audience are thinking about their questions, and actually, I mean, I do also reflect on what you shared with us just now. So basically, you were saying we need to test out, right? And you were saying that when you were, if you got a chance to talk to yourself, you will probably say, hey, brush up your writing skills and communication skills, right? So can you share with us a little bit more? So I know this is a design, this is planning job. It's more on the architectural planning, drawing, and that kind of stuff. Why writing communication skills become so important?
So the program itself is just general planning course. So urban design is more of a specialization where you can take a bunch of the urban design courses and actually receive a specialization in urban design. But that's only one aspect of the program. The large majority of the program is just general planning. So that will range, that will include urban design, but it includes other aspects that are largely centered around report writing and research. So in that case, most of the courses will be required, like a lot of teamwork communication, teamwork writing, and individual writing. So yeah, it's heavily reliant on writing, mainly because the general basis of the course is centered not within urban design, but more of a broad field of planning.
Okay. Yeah, I can see clearly. I mean, writing skills, communication skills is probably like in every subject areas. Of course, if you're only doing like programming, maybe you don't need to do that much writing. But in any other subjects, you need to write your thesis, your papers, and yeah, you need to communicate with your professors, your findings, your research. Yeah, definitely that's very important. Okay, I see there are two questions popping up, and we can do that one by one. And the first one is, how long was each co-op?
Yeah, so each co-op lasts for 1 term. So it's the same time as a school term, which is 4 months. So it's kind of like 4 months school, 4 months co-op, 4 months school, or 4 months study, 4 months study, 4 months school. It's sorry, 4 months study, 4 months study, 4 month co-op. It's just by fours. So each co-op is 4 months, approximately 4 months. Each employer will have a little bit of a varying contract, but the term itself is 4 months. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Actually, I will have the same question as well. What do urban designers usually do?
Okay, so yeah, in the professional setting, so I personally am not, I haven't worked at an urban design firm, but we have a lot of urban design courses that I've taken, and I have specialized in urban design within my courses. So I kind of have a general idea, but don't take my word 100% because I haven't worked in that field. But urban designers, their job is usually, well, there's urban designers in the public sector, which is for cities or regions, and there's urban designers in the private sector, which is for consulting companies. So their jobs are actually a little bit different. If you're working for the public sector, you are reviewing applications, and so the city reviews applications for any project, and within the region there's separate like there's the transportation planners, there's heritage planners, there's environmental planners, there's urban designers. So they all review different aspects of the same development. So the urban designer will review the urban design aspect and see if it follows up to their guidelines. So each city or region will have a set of design guidelines, like you must have a certain amount of setback, certain amount of density, certain amount of green space, that you must ensure there is, if you're building like a larger like master plan, like a whole neighborhood community, you must ensure there's, proper lighting, proper seating, just like literally like anything you see outside on the street, that there's urban designer has something to say about that, and they'll either approve it or have suggestions. Usually they're not going to approve it like firsthand, they'll have some suggestions. But if it's way off, like completely off from their guidelines, like the city guidelines, then they'll have like a lot to say about it. And the architect or urban designer that is on the team, the private consulting team, will have to change it based off of what the city says. And so the private urban designer is going to read what the city's design guidelines are and make sure that site is designing based off of those guidelines. So that will involve what the building density is and what the built form looks like. So literally like what the canvas is. And that might have to do with how much shadow is being blocked, how much setback from the road there is, so how close to the road it is. And this is usually because of the surrounding area. Like if you're building a high rise in an area that isn't really planned for high rises, it might disrupt the area. So that's why there's these guidelines in place. And the urban designers will come into play at that stage.
Wow, this sounds very interesting. There's a lot of things to think about. Okay, next one from Lucas. If you don't find an opportunity to the co-op, what would you do?
So you have kind of one freebie if you don't find, so there's 5 co-ops. If you don't find one, that's okay, as in like you won't, like you can still graduate. But if you don't find 2, that's when you're on academic probation, similar to if you're failing courses, and you will likely be kicked out unless you kind of appeal it, like you kind of go to the school and be like, wait, I have a reason, like a very valid reason or something. I don't really know of any of those cases, but I believe you're able to appeal them. So in terms of missing 1, you're fine. Just for graduation. 2, you're not fine. But you're missing 1 opportunity, it's still a missed opportunity, right? Like you want experience. So if you're trying to still find co-op, you miss that co-op term, you can still, like that cutoff time. So maybe the 4 months everyone's restarting work, but you did not find it. You can still find other work that is maybe related. Maybe it might be just volunteering, so you're not getting paid. Maybe it's semi-related, but not super related to the field, but it's still experience. So we have like a system like within the school where we apply for co-ops, but you can apply outside of it as well, because not every employer is going to be looking at Waterloo, especially if it's like an international employer. So it's kind of up to you, if you don't find it within that co-op term, to seek out other opportunities, just for your own sake of experience. But for school, it's fine if you miss 1.
So which means 1 is okay. If more than 1, you cannot graduate from this program. Is that right?
Yeah, you can't be in the program because some programs, they have a co-op and a non-co-op option. So if you don't get co-ops, you just go into the non-co-op option. But we only have co-op options, so you would just not be in the program. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Is it very necessary that students should be able to draw and paint if they want to apply for this program? Is this mandatory? No.
No, not at all. So architecture would be, but so we do have urban design like courses and a specialization, but our program itself is not urban design. It's just planning, because planning is so broad, especially an undergraduate degree to go into something so specialized is very unlikely. Even planning is so specialized. That's why there's not many programs out there. But urban, so you don't need to draw for the program to get in at all. They don't ask you. They don't even ask for a portfolio. And once you're in it, you don't have to go into urban design. Like in first year, you have to take that 1 course, but it's not that difficult. The courses later on for urban design are a little bit more difficult, but those are optional. So it's if you want to, but you don't have to.
But I know you that you do have some. You do like drawing and painting.
Yes.
Would that be a kind of a additional merit, additional qualification that give you the access to the program?
So for acceptance, no, they don't even ask about it. But once you're in it, and you want to pursue urban design specialization, it will be an asset because,
Okay.
well, depending on the prof, because the different professors are different, and they change sometimes. But some teachers in the upper urban design courses, they'll really want hand drawn drawings, but within urban planning, that's not necessarily necessary. There's computer programs, but even having the eye for design is important if you want to pursue it.
Mhm.
But the physical capabilities of drawing, that's dependent on the prof in upper
Mhm.
years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Next one from Emma. Are there a lot of job available for urban design? So, I mean, you share with us the career path, and what's the market like? Are there a lot of positions available when you graduate? How did you see that?
So within planning, I would say that it's generally like all of it, if you're adding it all together, I think there's an okay amount of jobs. It's not like the tech industry where they're seeking out individuals and it's like a hot market. Because tech is so profitable right now. But planning is necessary and it's always going to be necessary out there. And especially transportation planning is increasingly necessary. But urban design specifically, there is a slightly stagnant amount of jobs. Like they're there, but I wouldn't say it's a large proportion. Especially in co-op, it's very difficult to get an urban design job. Um, there's most it's kind of interesting because once you graduate and you apply for full-time urban design, once you get into it, the entry level jobs in urban design are like extremely entry level. Um, it's almost like that what's what you would expect during co-op, but they don't have those available. It's kind of like they're hiring later for some reason, because the entry level jobs, you're not necessarily learning that much. You're really just applying like program skills, like you know how to use software that can design things. That's really all. They're just making you do that. You're not learning that much in a lot of the urban design program companies that I know. But once you get higher up, you're able to really become more creative. That's kind of similar to architecture. Honestly, like entry level, it's a lot of nitty gritty stuff. You're just doing what other people tell you. So the jobs out there are a little bit more niche, not that many for urban design. I won't I won't lie.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Next one. I don't know. Like this. Well, this question is from Ivy Liu. I'm not. I'm not sure if she's a student or a parent. I mean, this is a very interesting question for me. What kinds of support do you expect mostly from parents during the university period? So yeah.
So yeah, I just think about that. um, I guess I guess one thing for me was that, especially if you're going to go into a co-op program, um, you want to be if um, your daughter or son is not or struggling with finding co-op. I guess this is similar with school. If they're struggling with school, but program is just sorry, co-op is just another thing to worry about. If you're struggling with school, kind of be like there for them to say like that's okay. Like it's hard. It's not something you can like go back a year, take more time. It's not the end of the world. I think that's a really important support. Not being like, just try harder. Like, I don't understand why you're struggling. Just try harder. Like, don't do that, of course. Be like, I understand. Because while academics, I think in the program is relatively okay. Like, it's challenging if you're not used to writing at first, but then you need to get used to it. But the co-op side, I think, is stressful continuously. Like it's extremely, I would say co-op is very stressful to apply to because you are applying not even, so school starts and a month later or like around a month later, you start applying to jobs almost every day. And then you have to attend interviews and et cetera, et cetera. So it's almost like an extra course. Like applying to jobs is almost like an extra course because you're gonna create resumes and cover letters for each. So you have maybe one or two resumes, but you have to create cover letters for almost every job that you apply to, and you get you have to apply to around like 50 jobs at first. So it's a lot of work to apply to co-ops at first. So a lot of students are very very stressed during co-op application times, and a lot of the stress within University of Waterloo is due to not finding jobs or finding jobs too late, like essentially because you have 3 months to find a job, and some students will get them like really early on. Some of them won't get them until like exam time, and it's just you're feeling the stress because your peers are getting it and you're not, or vice versa, and it's just stressful for co-op. So just to be there to be them, it's okay if you don't get co-op. It's okay if you're struggling. Don't push them. Kind of give them like a way out if you're there or not. If you're not able to do it, don't like some people like our school has not has some issues with just mental health because people are stressed about that. But if you tell them, that's not at the end of the world. It's okay if you're not getting into co-op. It's okay if you're delayed a year or something. I think that's very important.
Oh, thank you, Amy. I think you brought up a very interesting topic. Coincidentally, actually, I was talking about this topic with one of our teachers this morning about it's okay. I think the Asian culture and this American culture is slightly different. I think for a
Yeah.
Chinese, from a Chinese parent perspective, it's okay. Means, are you saying I'm stupid? I cannot do it? But I think locally in America, it's like, I believe you are, if you are trying, if you are doing your best, it's okay to fail. I mean, it's totally different concept. I mean, Chinese parents probably say, hey, you have to work harder each day. But here, I mean, America concept, I mean, for those of students who actually born here or raised here, I mean, you probably hear a teacher say it's okay because teacher believes that as long as you're doing your best, it's okay to fail, it's okay to lose once, but as long as you are trying, you should be successful. So it's really also a cultural difference here, I would
For
say.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think just to add on to that, I think it's definitely. I think at a different like time in your life, like elementary school, middle school, or high school, there might be a little bit like there's always pressure. But I think once you're at a university level, when you're in the environment, I think especially with co-op, because it's not just your school, it's your professional career, like after school, this is what you're considering. I think it's almost more important for parents to kind of say, like, this isn't the end all be all if you don't get it, because the stress is actually like, I think it's like a huge part in our school because the environment itself is a little bit competitive within the students themselves. So if the parents are also pushing that, it's a lot. So
Mhm.
to offer that support, especially at the university level, I think is really important.
Yeah. Well, also, I remember co-op is not just, I mean, it's not about academic and also study and application interview. Even that 4 months, you need to probably leave another part of the city outside campus and finding
Mm,
an apartment, a condo, and then you
yeah,
figure out the transportations and commute. I mean, that's another problem, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
kind of stressful.
it's always you're looking for something, you're applying for something, you're doing something.
That's right. Yeah.
Mhm,
So I think for the parents, probably just be more supportive, I would say, right? What you mentioned. Yeah,
mhm.
it's supportive and give them encouragement and let them fail once or twice. It's okay and move on. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Ivy. Okay. So let's see. Do you have any other questions? If you have, please type it in the chat box. Okay. Okay. Hmm. That's a challenging question. Do you have to have high grades to be an urban designer?
Okay. So I'm not sure if you mean like to get into a planning program or you mean to pursue the specialization, or does that help professionally? So to get into the program, the average I think is low 80s, or I think that's the average. It might be changing. So the grade's not that hard to get into. I think that's a lot of, I think Canadian or North American universities, it's easy to get into. It's just hard to stay in compared to a lot of Chinese universities. But within the program, to achieve the specialization, within this program, you need to keep a 75% cumulative average. Um, so if you're trying to achieve an urban design specialization, that means uh, your average for urban design courses have to be an 80 plus. So it's a little, it kind of increases a little bit if you're trying to achieve the specialization. But like the specialization isn't your major, right? It's a specialization. So it's not really going to show on your degree. But you might write that on your resume if you want to be applying to urban design jobs. So you would have to maintain an 80 plus average in the urban design courses. So those are the grades you'd need to get that specialization. But if you're just thinking about, do I need high grades in the future to be an urban designer? No, like your grades will not matter at all after. Like they won't even look at your transcript. What matters is your experience. Experience is way more important than your marks. The only reason marks would matter once you're in university is if you want to go into postgrad, and that's when your marks will matter, but not specifically for urban design.
Okay, yeah, that's a very comprehensive one. Yeah, from to get to the program and then for career-wise or for the postgrad. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Amy, for that, and thank you, Wu, for the question. Okay, let's see. Do we have any more questions? So, Amy, are you all ready for your career? I think that should start this summer. So this is the last semester, right?
Yeah, so it would start this summer. I'm currently applying. I started applying a few weeks ago. And there's, because of COVID, I think there's less jobs than normal, I won't lie. And I know there have been layoffs just throughout. But I'm still applying, and I do have like one of my last co-ops. I'm able to return, but I'm still trying to see if I'm able, because I like my first job isn't going to be the job I'm going to have forever. So I kind of want to explore a little bit more, you know, try out different companies or more in the public sector because I've worked a lot in the private sector. So I kind of want to see, explore a bit more. But I do have the option of returning, so that's kind of feels like a nice safety net, especially with COVID right now. But yeah, I'm still kind of seeing if I can go outside of what I've already tried.
Great, great. I think, Amy, I really appreciate you. I mean, I like your spirit of adventures. I mean, trying out, testing out what you really like, and yeah, stay out of the comfort zone. I mean, yes, you can always return, and then, but you want to explore a few more other opportunities. That's great. That's very good. Okay, so I think that's all the questions for tonight. And Amy, thank you so much for your sharing, and thank you to all our audience for joining us. And yes, everyone, please just join me in saying a big thank you to Amy. Okay, what I can do is I can use my reactions. Okay, thank you, Amy.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye, guys.